A call to order for the Bartlett Economic Development Commission meeting of January 12, 2015.
Jerry Cabasso.
Present.
Cecilia Green.
Here.
Donna Weir.
Here.
Robert Perry.
Here.
Nayan Mehta. Jeff Petro.
Here.
Tracy Smadilla.
Here.
Mike Sobel.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, next item on the agenda would be the approval of the December 8th, 2014 meeting minutes. Any discussion on this, or do we have a motion to approve?
I move we approve the minutes.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Being carried. We have a limited agenda tonight, primarily composed of the downtown tax increment financing district discussion and hopefully approval. We'll move on to that. I believe Jim's going to give us a overview of tonight's discussion.
Thank you, Chairman Cabasso. Just for introductions, we have in the audience our TIF consultant from Kane McKenna, Chuck Durham, who has got the short straw, but he lives in Bartlett, so his partner said, you go to this meeting. And then we also have our trustee candidate, Adam Hopkins, who is running for the village board in this spring. So,
Okay. Welcome both of them to the meeting tonight.
With that, I'll give you a brief overview of the TIF district as proposed and written and prepared by Kane McKenna, and then I'll have Chuck and myself will here to answer any questions. Everything that's on the slides is in your packet, so I don't have slides of everything, but just first of all, the TIF district, what Kane McKenna has done is an eligibility study and then determined if it's eligible, and then they also prepared a redevelopment plan, which you have. And when the TIFs are created, the eligibility study becomes kind of an appendix to the redevelopment plan, and that goes through the process through the village board committee. We have to have your commission. There's a joint review board that still has to be held, made up of all the taxing districts, and then a final public hearing held in front of the village board prior to its adoption. The map shows the TIF district that we have, that Kane McKenna has studied. It essentially is the downtown area where the original TIF district was, and it's extended eastward through including the Flexonics property and including the commercial property on Prospect Avenue near Wilmington and Prospect north of Devon. The redevelopment goals in the village plan, which is to sustain and enhance the downtown area, improve the overall land use mix, attract new shopping and services, improve the physical condition of the area, maintain an attractive pedestrian environment, improve bicycle, pedestrian, and vehicle circulation, and create a cooperative partnership between the village and the business owners and future developers. There's a table of estimated project costs. The estimated project costs are based on TIF-eligible costs, and those of you who have served on the EDC in the past realize that we can do infrastructure, land acquisition, environmental remediation, rehabilitation. There's also a taxing district cost, and you might have questions about that, and I'll let Chuck explain that if you have questions about it, but there's legislation that requires certain taxing districts to get a share of revenues. There's interest costs, planning, legal, administrative, job training, school and library district payments. That's the two districts, with a total estimated TIF budget when it is all said and done of $17.5 million. It includes some infrastructure for water, storm, sewers, and some road improvements, as well as streetscape and pedestrian improvements. The rehabilitation is we used to call it the facade program. And those are things that you have as a commission have reviewed in the past prior to, and those will be done on a reimbursement. We have not set those parameters yet. The redevelopment project includes, again, eligible costs and reflects the budget that's in there for land assembly, site preparation, landscaping, buffering, streetscaping, rehabilitation work, infrastructure improvements, and roadway and parking improvements. There's also potential public improvements, traffic control, public safety related work, street lights, public facilities, signage, interest costs, professional services, and again, the school and library district costs, if those come into play. The TIF qualification report, which is a subset of the redevelopment plans and appendix. The TIF under the eligibility report was qualified under the conservation area. TIF, it is, there's 13 maximum factors under the state statute. You need a minimum of 3. The village in this TIF area qualified as we have 6 various qualification factors, including the lag in the EAV, inadequate utilities, excessive vacancies, lack of planning, deterioration, and obsolescence. And those are the criteria which Kane McKenna determined qualifies the downtown area as a conservation area. The summary of findings, just related to the TIF legislation. It's bigger, it's greater than 1.5 acres. Again, qualifying as a conservation area. Property in the area would benefit from the redevelopment. The growth of the taxing districts applicable to the area has been impaired by factors found to be present, and the area would not be subject to redevelopment without the investment of public funds, including property tax increments. That is what they refer to as the but-for test. And as you see, Kane McKenna found that there is these, in their judgment, this area qualifies as a TIF. And that is the end of what I have. Sorry, I clicked off of it. And the report obviously has a little more detail as well as the eligibility plan. But I'm here to answer questions, and our expert, Chuck Durham from Kane McKenna, is also here to answer any of your questions. What we're looking for tonight, if you get through it, is a positive recommendation from the EDC to the village board to continue on with the process to complete the review and the joint review board and public hearings necessary to adopt the TIF district. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them, but Chuck is the expert and he will be better qualified to answer them than I am.
The question I got, Jim, is...
Excuse me, Robert. I've just noticed that not everybody... Are your microphones all on? Because I didn't hear that. Please turn them on because I am recording it. So, thank you.
Is that better?
Yeah, much better.
Okay. It was off.
Oh.
Thank you. The question I have, Jim, is the redevelopment plan says that we're qualified as a project area, as a blighted area, or a conservation area. And I know the word conservation and area, but in relation to our redevelopment plan, what exactly does that qualify us to do as far as being qualified as a conservation area?
I'm going to let Chuck answer that because he's done the in-depth analysis.
Okay, thank you. Good night. I'm sorry for being a little bit late. And thanks for having me. Basically, what you have to consider is under the TIF law, which was established back in 1977, it basically established several different methods or criteria by which you could create as a tax compliance institution. So you could look at the range of qualification factors. You could, therefore, based on that, declare areas blighted. You can look at the same factors. If you have the additional factor page, you could go to conservation. And there's a couple of other categories of under vacant property and also industrial conservation. All of those are just ways to qualify an area under state law for tax and economies of district. Once you meet those conditions, regardless of how you gather, regardless of how you qualify, it has the same powers in the TIF Act, no matter which one you got. So there's no greater power by the code of environment versus conservation or anything else. What you have to consider when you look at an area is what that's characterized as the area. In our view, and based on use of the TIF district, conservation areas primarily were created with traditional downtown areas in mind. That is, Jefferson knew that there were numerous communities around the state. They had older downtowns. They had older buildings that went back in the 1800s, early 1900s, etc. There weren't necessarily what we call flight in the development area. But because of certain economic changes over the decades, we qualified perhaps for some economic development systems. So in this case, because of that type of history of conservation area, and based on what we witnessed, we thought the best specifications for development was under the conservation area.
So with the dollars that are provided under this program, does that mean that we take the dollars and remodel the properties that are over 35 years of age? Is there something that says that we can't knock them down, that they have to be remodeled or repaired?
No, the law is very flexible in terms of how you can use the dollars based on the budget that Jim put up. It could be used certainly for the purpose of renovating older buildings, but it can also be used for taking a building that may be in building condition, demolishing, and putting a new building. It could be used for acquiring that build suit product. It can be used, as you mentioned, and there's been a big use around different communities for use for infrastructure improvements to not so much directly impact investments in the structures, but providing infrastructure for them to the backbone so that they can perhaps attract private investors to invest in those projects. There's a wide range of costs that the village can use to leverage for private investors to come in and make investments in those older properties, as well as the village can use direct investment along with private investors to bring that.
Thank you.
One of the comments that I saw in this particular report was that we lacked a distinct community plan in this area, which is part of the reason why it's probably that those disjointed features that are giving us some trouble in actually developing a more robust economic base in this area. Is the cost for a revised plan included in this budget? Is that part of like site preparation and environmental remediation?
One of the things, you can do that, but as you recall, we also applied for, in one of your previous recommendations, the 23 items, one of the things was to apply for the RTA for funding, and we received that grant for doing that plan under the RTA, Downtown Transit-Oriented Development Plan. That plan goes hand in glove with this TIF, because we'll be able to go through that planning process fairly soon, within this spring and this summer, and then prepare that plan, and then the TIF will then follow with it as the funding mechanism to implement that plan. So we've kind of got the best of both worlds.
That's terrific. So then in working with the RTA and the grant that we've received, then we would also consider we would also start to consider redoing the Metro platform, considering vertical structures in the downtown for parking, so that would give us again more opportunity for land acquisition. If we're looking for continuity in the plan for downtown,
those could be items that come out in the planning process. Yes.
Just a quick question for clarification. The area is not included on the map. Are those because they're residential or primarily residential?
Yeah, as a recommendation to the village, we felt that, particularly as we have some of the strategic plans, that the best focus for this particular TIF district was for development of commercial properties in the traditional downtown area, plus the preparation of perhaps some future sites for the as a general consideration, we generally will recommend to communities that they stay away from including larger residential properties in the TIF district. A, because it involves a longer planning process, and B, because we want to be very careful in terms of the planning activity for folks that's commercial. We want to try to keep the focus on
One other quick follow-up question to that. On the border of the TIF plan, was anything south of Devon considered being included, such as Leisburg Park or anything of that nature, or was the look just north of Devon?
Yes, it was considered. We kick things out. We as a company, we understand, and we look at a large area. Then we made some strategic recommendations around the area that you have to do. One of the considerations that we recommended was that with respect to the TIF district, we had a distinct disadvantage of commercial properties in Cook County versus
Yeah.
so that was kind of number one. And most of the tradition downtown is in the Cook County area. And I'm going to show you about the relative differences in the taxing structure, the difficulty of commercial properties competing with traditional. You have the new situation. We in an environment that we're bifurcated five different counties. That was one consideration. It's not necessarily something that is a governing consideration, but it's something we really want to consider. A second reason for one is that in terms of the requirement of different taxing districts, and obviously they have very good ones, it becomes a larger planning process to include multiple counties, because one of the things we go through the process, you have adjournment people. And each county, each school district, each park district, each taxing district is a single adjournment board. By keeping it to the county, we're to keep the focus on a relatively few other taxing districts having into the planning process.
Thank you.
Makes sense.
I do have a few questions. In the report, I did notice it mentioned one of the qualifying factors seemed to be inadequate utilities. What specific utilities do you think fall under that category?
You know, it's an evaluation that we made with the public works department. We asked them for an evaluation of some information on things like age of infrastructure, the general condition of infrastructure, things of that nature. What you see above ground, the most public streets and everything, is in pretty good shape. Particularly when you have to notice the previous tip where the improvements made, and also the council, it's an excellent shape. But what you have then, all the communities like Bartlett, underground, is you have some presence of infrastructure, very old, beginning, so you start to worry about things like the age of the water main, the age of the sanitary sewer schools, and when we did the evaluation, we noted that there was an age in those things, and then over a period of 23 years, that this is going to last, there could be an issue, some of those things fell. So that became a factor that was qualified for designation.
Okay. Then when it comes to submitting to the state, this is the first time I've been involved in a TIF, is there a fee when we do submit formally to the state? I mean, from the state itself.
Let me answer that two ways. In terms of this process and adopting the TIF plan and the TIF district, the answer is absolutely no. The village has total control power over that. It doesn't have to pay any fees or anything to the state. What it does have to do is keep the state informed. For example, when you start the process, you have to send the plan to the state. You have to legislate on when the public hearing is going to be, or invite you to public hearing, you have to show up. So they have a chance to have their footage. So that's one part. Let's say you put it in the state in place. Then there is an annual process where you have to do annual reports. And that reporting system is also with the state. There's no fee with respect to that reporting system unless you're late with your reports. Recently, the state has imposed late fees. So if you don't submit the reports on a timely basis, there can be fees associated with that. Although I'm sure Bartlett is always going to have time associated with it.
Yeah. You guys have never been late on any filings on the current?
We haven't been late,
File,
no.
Our finance department actually, our assistant director of finance is actually very good at it, and he makes sure that those reports for all the existing TIFs are filed on time every year.
Okay.
And if you walk into that, you can go to the state Department of Controller's office, they have a website, and they have a list of community.
Now, this one I probably might be open to you gentlemen too as well, is the, we have limited the TIF area. What, in the past, have you seen pushback from other commercial areas in Bartlett who haven't been included in the TIF? And would you expect that we might see anything from some of the current commercial property areas not included?
Yep, I'll take that one. In the past, it hasn't been that large of an issue because of something that Chuck said, where the downtown area has always had a number of disadvantages over, for instance, the Stearns Road and Route 59 intersection. But as some vacancies have been occurring there, some well-known vacancies there, the vacancy rate is still lower at that intersection than it is in the downtown area. So kind of the short answer is yes, we've heard it before, but on the flip side, other people in other business areas recognize the lower traffic counts in the downtown area, the older buildings, and obviously we've spoken about it month after month. It's not along a major thoroughfare, so the traffic counts are maybe 10,000 in the downtown area, whereas they're close to 40,000 at Stearns and 59. So whenever it's been brought up to me, I bring up all those disadvantages that the downtown has had, as opposed to, let's say, 59 and Stearns intersection, for example.
So is your impression that the other commercial areas not included aren't really going to be, feel left out to a high degree that'll cause conflict in the community?
I don't think they feel left out, but sometimes we do get requests for, helping some of the shopping centers do remodeling and those types of things. And we have used other incentives in those areas. We've used sales tax incentives. We've done some infrastructure improvements to help those areas. So it's not a total TIF, but it is things that we have used in the past to help those businesses. But we do get pushback. You get pushback from the different taxing districts too. When we hold the joint review board hearings, there's always questions and some pushback from some of the other districts.
Mm-hmm.
They do tend to push back more on those residential properties.
Right.
As opposed to particularly to school districts.
Has there been any sense of anticipation of the TIF district actually being approved and going through by the existing downtown businesses, or those business or building owners that may or may not have a business in their buildings right now? And I hate to point anybody out, but Lucky Jack's comes to mind.
I have to answer that as an emphatic yes. As you all are aware, ever since the discussion of TIF came up, which at this point was approximately a year ago, and throughout the study, I can say that I've met with a combination, mostly more property owners, because you ask business owners and property owners. It's been more interest on the property owner side to redevelop some of the existing buildings or underutilized properties. I don't have a crystal ball, but I would venture to say that you probably would see more properties redeveloped in the downtown during the life of this TIF than buildings that wouldn't be. That's the sense I'm getting, because there are quite a few. Lucky Jack's is just one. There's probably 5 or 6 others that have strong interest in it.
And thank you. Refresh my memory. I think you gave us a graph, a chart not too long ago that actually showed the last time there was the downtown was a TIF district, and the amount of rebates that went back to businesses in the area. And from that, I do remember that there are still some of those existing businesses that benefited from that. On the surface, I think a TIF district is wonderful, I think particularly for a downtown area. But as Commissioner Petro mentioned, I guess I do have some concern about businesses in other parts of the village that aren't able to take advantage of TIF dollars. And I guess if I were to have any hesitancy, I would hate to think that we're setting up a corporate welfare program for those downtown businesses that have already received TIF dollars, because it seems like it wasn't all that long ago that there were checks cut to those companies or into those businesses that had done improvements to their buildings. And I would hate to think that they're just sitting and dragging their heels waiting for additional tax dollars to be rebated to them.
And just to go back to that, when that TIF district, we gave that chart you're talking about, we gave out probably over $850,000 in rebates to all those businesses. And Cecilia, that last TIF was ended almost 5 years ago. It's 2010. And we carried over, if you recall, at the end, we had contractual obligations to do some of the ending improvements and we had a lot of rebate requests at that end. But you're right, Tracy, there are still businesses who took advantage of those rebate programs. The good thing is there are a lot of new businesses in town and and owners that can take advantage of this future TIF. And as Tony said, there's a lot of interest generated on some of the vacant structures and new developers wanting to, they're waiting till the TIF's created and they want to do some redevelopment. So this is the vehicle to do it with. I don't think you would have them come in if there was no TIF.
Yet they still won't be able to immediately see any proceeds from this. It's going to take some years to build up the funding for that.
It takes some time to build up the revenues. As you know, they're always paid a year after the district is created. But there is some opportunities, and we've done this in other TIFs where the village can borrow if they see a development necessary or an infrastructure improvement necessary from another fund and pay it back with the TIF funds as we progress. But if you were to just do it like we did the last TIF district, we actually did loan money out to Gorski's to do a construction loan, and we paid their interest, and we paid that back over the TIF. The pay-as-you-go TIF that we created back then, they're not, and Chuck will attest to it, they're not as common as they used to be. Because you used to be able to take advantage of the sales tax. See, and you can't do that anymore. So the old TIF, you had the sales tax revenue coming in pretty quickly, and then those things combined with the property tax. We never borrowed anything at that last TIF. We just paid it out as we did a budget. We said, here's how much we expect. These are the infrastructure, streetscape, rehab program, all that. And we fortunately had enough money in that TIF to then carry out that budget and do all those programs. And at the end of the day, we still gave $2 million back to the taxing districts when it was all said and done. So it was very successful, but unfortunately, you don't have those same parameters in this day and age. It's just property tax, and you're right, it does take a while to build it up.
Tony and Jim, a quick question for you. With the previous TIFs, have you ever collected kind of a lessons learned or wish we would have type of lists from the previous TIFs so that we can make sure to carry those forward with this TIF, if we go forward with it.
The one lesson I've learned with the Route 59 and Lake Street TIF is never do it when the economy's going to crash. But also in that one, and I'll just go back to this map, that TIF on Route 59 and Lake Street, I don't think we made it big enough, and we didn't capture enough of the surrounding properties. We should have gone beyond just the vacant properties and went and captured like the Cadillac Ranch and the property across the street, which used to be the RV place, and then there was one property to the south. We didn't capture those. So one of the things that we're talking about, and this is just talked about last Saturday in our strategic plan session with the village board, is possibly redoing that TIF and restructuring it so that it captures some of those other properties. But at the time when we did that TIF, we had a developer who said this is what he needs, this is the land he needs. We created it kind of for him, and then things went south.
So, although that is a good lesson learned, have there actually been discussions where people capture, hey, you know what, when we execute the next TIF, we should do these things. We didn't do these things as good as we could have. We could have defined things better, or we could have shown people things in a better way to take more advantage of the TIF. Are there some lessons learned from the previous TIFs that we can actually share with the constituents, the businesses, and ourselves to make sure that we execute this TIF better?
There always is. I think in this context, the rehab component of it, we were at 30% of rehabbing, and what we learned on the last TIF is, and those of you who were on the board for a while, we increased that rehab money throughout the lifespan of the TIF because it got to be a point it wasn't enough, and we started out with 15,000, and I don't know if it was 20% or 15% of what you did, and we ended up 100,000 max, and you got 30%. So when we do this, when we set up the parameters, we may increase the percentage that you can get back. We may be more flexible with what you can use it for. Before it was code compliance, pretty much only. We may add some aesthetics, some signage, those types of things to it. I think we added signage at the end of the last one.
You did signage. The thing that occurred to me when
Yeah.
we were reviewing all those, one of the vital needs of anyone starting a business might be some help with the build-out money.
Right, the build-out, and
That
and not
really
just be
stalls
code-related, yeah, so those are the things that we would carry forward with this one. The other thing and I hope we don't encounter it, but we did in the last TIF, was the environmental part of it. We ended up cleaning up a lot of environmental contamination from the old factories that used to be across the street. And we put that in here as for the potential for environmental remediation, but that was a surprise last time. So that's one of the things we learned, and we put that in here.
So I guess my question is, would it be worth the village's time for the appropriate people to kind of sit down and put a list together of best lessons learned and best practices to carry forward with the next TIF so that everything gets included? Because I'm sure off the cuff you've just come up with some great ideas. Are there other people that could be included in that conversation to add additional ideas like that to make sure we execute this as best as possible?
That's one of the reasons that you have a joint review board hearing of all the taxing districts that are in there, because they might come up with ideas, and you have a public hearing. So this is the time to...
Well, I guess my point is the people at the village are the ones that lived it, breathed it, and had to execute it. Why wouldn't it be a good idea for them to kind of brainstorm prior to that, to bring a list of best practices to execute the plan? You know what I'm saying? So some of them you've already executed, such as, hey, we need to make this TIF area bigger. Some of them, need to be brought out to the forefront. You mentioned the signage, paying for build-out, paying a higher percentage, things like that. Why not create a formal list of these things prior to those meetings to share with them and say, hey, guys, this is what we've learned from previous TIFs, and these are our recommendations of things to do in the next round of TIFs to make it better.
Well, I think we did a lot of that, and Kane McKenna has done a lot of that with this TIF district. So if you're looking for a list of, say, like, we need to rehab this building, rehab that building,
I'm
I
just
don't know if
looking
we
for
want to
best
get that.
practices. Yeah, I'm just looking for lessons learned, like you just shared with us just now. That's kind of what I'm talking about, just
Right.
lessons learned types of things, so that the people who are making the decision to move forward have the intelligence that you've already gathered, so to speak. And
We can
you know, when you hand
certainly
it to them, when you hand it to them on a plate, it's much easier for them to digest than you saying, well, this and this and this after the fact. If you present them up front and say, look, here are all the lessons that we learned over the last 3 TIFs that we did, I mean, that's like the golden ticket, right? They're going to be like, wow, these guys thought about this, these guys want to execute it right, and they're probably going to take your suggestions and move forward with them.
We can do that. I don't have any problem doing that. It's the only, this is a little different than the other TIFs, though. In this downtown area, the other TIFs are industrial TIFs. So it's just a little different twist on things. But I have no problem doing that. And when we get into the rules or the regulations on when we adopt the program, we have an annual budgeting process, and putting those things like further defining what's qualified as rehabbing and further defining the infrastructure. Those things will be done in the details when we get through the process.
I have a question on, you mentioned how this new TIF would be funded, a different way in the past, through property taxes. With Brewster Creek right now, is that being funded the same through property taxes?
It's all
They're all
property
property
taxes.
tax TIFs, yeah.
How much, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, if we have to fund this new TIF through debt instruments that this village has to take out, is it going to put pressure on our debt rating, because we're also probably having to do the same with Brewster Creek, funding it through, going out and taking loans, bonds?
Well, Brewster Creek, there's bonds issued for that one. So essentially, the TIF revenues are paying back the bonds.
So,
and so it's a little different scenario in there.
So Brewster Creek's fully funded, the full amount of the TIF?
When you say fully funded,
You've borrowed the full amount, the maximum that you'd have to use for TIF-related expenses?
Yeah,
reimbursement?
that one's more of a pay-as-you-go.
Okay.
And the mechanism of it is the developer pays for the cost. The developer has issued notes, Elmhurst, Chicago Stone, and they come to the village, I think 2 or 3 times a year.
We just paid.
And the village, the village pays them back basically for the costs that they've incurred. And if you want to talk about lessons learned, I think it's one of the most successful TIFs there is. But even so, during the lean years of the recession, it was just barely making those payments. EAVs have dropped, even in the business park, even the last few years. But like Jim said, it's a totally different type of TIF. It would be hard for me to compare the downtown TIF to the Brewster Creek TIF.
Well, if we had to take out the estimated budget of $17.5 million, because it does allow for us to do that kind of a thing, to fund it ourselves as a village, would you expect that would affect our ratings, so that future financing needs for the village would be affected?
Well, yeah, obviously, yes. Remember that $17.5 million is an estimate over a period of 23 years. Mm-hmm. So I couldn't imagine. I'm not in the finance end of it, but I couldn't imagine the village, borrowing that type of amount that would fund improvements for 23 years.
What's more
might be $1 million.
What would be more likely to happen is if Chuck mentioned that there's some aging infrastructure, and say we felt, okay, let's accelerate this streetscape work. We want to finish this streetscape, but we have a storm sewer under the street that needs to be replaced. and say the cost of the storm sewer might be, just for argument's sake, $1 million. We might be more likely to borrow $1 million to do that one segment and then pay it off back. But we would never borrow the whole $17.5 million in one fell swoop. That would not be fiscally responsible. But we might borrow a small segment of money if we felt the need to complete an infrastructure improvement and there wasn't enough money in the TIF. Ideally, you plan those projects in your capital budget process, which we do every year, to fall in line with the increments as they come in. So that in 5 years, say, we have $2 million in the TIF, and then that $1 million project becomes necessary, that we would fund it in year 5 or year 6. That's the ideal situation.
Do either of you know the estimated value of the Lucky Jack's property?
Yeah, that is actually supposed to transact in court this week. And I can't remember the exact number, but it's like the low 300s, like 310, 320,000, something like that. It's been pending. I get asked about that one a lot for a good example of a potential TIF project. And just so you know, that property's been subject to a court case now for well over 2 years. I'm going to say 2.5 years. So it's a good example of something that could be rehabbed, you know, once some increment starts getting generated, and
or earlier,
or hopefully earlier, really.
Well, with that, you know, again, we can look at Lucky Jack's as being a good example of a blighted property. But going back to your comment earlier, Jim, that you said that there were developers in waiting that are really looking at this particular area of Bartlett, and again, hopeful that there are going to be TIF dollars coming forth. Clearly, they've got an idea as to what they want to do with some of the land or some of the buildings. Is there any particular vision or industry or business mix that they're proposing with that space, or any idea that they've floated? The reason I ask this is it goes back to Chuck's comments, and I'm going to reference you if that's okay, the comments in the report that part of the problem we have is the lack of a community plan. So shouldn't we kind of go back to the drawing board of what's our actual vision for this area as it relates to attracting the right use for the space, and then developing a continuity plan?
Yes and no. You're going to have people who want to do something right away, and with the case of Lucky Jack's, I think the idea is to turn it into a nice brew pub. I mean, that's kind of what they talked about. It's basically the use that's there, where you need to have that planning directive. And the last time we did a plan was with there was a village center plan done with the old TIF district in the mid-'80s. So what you need the plan for is to direct the areas that would be subject to redevelopment from basically the ground up. There's probably some properties that are going to be looked at as, let's do some land assembly here and take these buildings down and redo it. Most of what is being discussed by these potential developers is commercial with residential in a vertical fashion, similar to what the town center was. That seems to be, and I mean, it's not any great stretch to do that, but that seems to be what people want to do. They want to keep that service and restaurant and downtown feel, but they know they need additional bodies to help those things function properly. And that's kind of the redevelopment ideas that have been floated by a lot of the people that Tony and I talked to.
And what is our plan moving forward then to attract very specific industry or businesses into that area? I think that would be a really good question as it related to the needs that we would have from the developers and their investment in developing infrastructure. Certainly, if we've got some aging infrastructure and we've got aging utilities, I think we would want to make sure that any developer that puts something into these areas would include fiber optics, for example, or any, again, especially with like a mixed, residential and business development, we would want to make sure that they're not going to be stressing the infrastructure that's already in place.
Well, the advantage that we have is we have this RTA grant, which we didn't have the last time when we did the town center. With the town center, when we did that redevelopment, we actually had a design planning charrette with a consultant who helped guide the community through the process of taking those old factories and turning them into some type of vision. So we did that, even though the overall TIF plan said that should be commercial and residential. That's kind of what the TIF plan said. But we felt the need to go through and do almost like a subset of that. And we had a redevelopment plan and for that, just that particular 10-acre spot. And that came out of a design kind of cooperative with the taxing districts and with the community and the business owners. So the RTA plan affords you to do that on a whole basis rather than on an individual block basis. And then, when we did the TIF plan, it identified other areas for commercial development. Those areas never developed, but they, there are some of them are still vacant. Some of them are metro lots that we showed as those should be commercial, retail, or service, or offices. They ended up being bought by Metro and became metro lots. So a lot of it is ownership. Those areas, this RTA plan could identify those areas as prime for redevelopment and not stay metro lots, hopefully, forever. Not that I have anything against Metro, but, I mean, there are some properties that could be prime redevelopment areas that are taken up in a lot of asphalt and curbs and drive-throughs for banks and everything.
Well, that sounds like our obvious first step then, isn't it? To
work with
the RTA grant and really develop a robust vision for that area?
Well, we have the RTA grant that's on board. Our next step in that is to pick a consultant through their process and start getting through that plan. The TIF district, in the meantime, still has to move forward in order to qualify for the state requirements. We still need to do the TIF district. Otherwise, you could do all the plans in the world. You don't have any funding mechanism to develop what's there. You won't realize any of the planning.
And again, going through this for the first time, I just thought it was obvious that we at least had some kind of vision in order to budget accordingly for it. I get a little nervous when I see $17.5 million when we're not really sure where it's going. I mean, obviously there's a generalization of it, but again, I don't think we want to run into another costly environmental remediation problem.
And hopefully we won't. The properties that are in the district, we've pretty much identified that with the last TIF, and we're going to try to stay away from those. But you never know with some of the pieces that could be redeveloped until you dig in the ground and say, oh, geez, there was a buried oil tank here. I mean, we found that with properties. I mean, the old factory across the street had a railroad car buried in it, full of oil. That was a fun one.
Well, and honestly, without that TIF, right, no one's going to clean that up.
Without the TIF, it would never been cleaned up.
Right. So
Right.
it was actually a good thing it got caught during the
Yeah.
TIF.
Can I ask, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Can I ask a question about, if you said that one of the things that you wish we had done in one of the other TIFs was to, maybe it should have been bigger. At this point, let's say if we wanted to expand this to, say, to Lake Street to cover the center that's over on Lake and Oak, what's involved if we wanted to change the boundary map at this point? Does it have to go back to square one, with the consultants, or it is what it is, we can't change it?
Well, once
And then
you
I see
set-
that we're also cutting out like Spinazi, we're like right at North Avenue, and then we're not including Spinazi in there, and,
We didn't want to get into that residential neighborhood even, I know there was one piece there. In separate discussions, one of the things that the board identifies in its strategic plan is to look at other areas and evaluate other potential TIF districts and redevelopment areas throughout the community. And one of the things that we have looked at in the past and could come to the forefront when we get this done is we've long requested and thought about creating another TIF district on Lake Street. Basically from Bartlett Avenue realigned on the north with North Bartlett and Oak realignment all the way east to the village boundary on the east side, and creating a kind of a corridor TIF plan up there. And we've actually talked about that for probably 10 years. And it just, what I see instead of expanding this one up that way is to create another TIF district up there, because that one could qualify as blighted.
yeah.
And certainly would qualify as a conservation district. And I see that probably as an opportunity, and quite, the board set priorities over the years, and that one's never been quite made the muster, but I think it will. And I see that being the better step, is to create that rather than extend these boundaries north. Because between here and when you get to the school, you really don't have much that's subject to redevelopment. It's more of you could maybe do some infrastructure, but along Lake Street, you've got opportunities to really do stuff.
And is it one of the constricting factors that the boundary has to be continuous? Right?
Contiguous,
And so
yes.
you end up having to include stuff, and then you dilute your numbers, so you don't meet the numbers to become a TIF district. So that's where the difficulty lies.
Right.
So it'd be difficult just to go across the street to Spinozzi and just grab one commercial building.
It's easier to do that now than if you do that process first.
Right.
That's an improvement issue. To answer your earlier question, if you start the public process and you get to the point of adopting a TIF district, if at that point you want to expand the boundaries, then you do have to start from square one. So the best practice, the best practices, is to draw your boundaries, get comfortable with them, and then stick with them through the process.
Well, I have a question then, Chuck. Relative to the property that's being discussed, the Spinozzi, the bike shop, you familiar with that, where that's on the western edge of the boundary, on the north side of the railroad track?
Yes,
Okay. It's right across the street from where the edge is up there off of Oneida Avenue. Or actually, it's up off of North Avenue, isn't it? Spinozzi?
They're the dental
You're
shop.
talking about the bike shop?
Yes.
The Spin Doctors?
Oh, yeah, I was thinking
Yeah,
of Spin Doctor.
that's at Bartlett Avenue and Hickory. In that,
Okay, so that's in
it's
there.
in the TIF, yeah.
What was it that we,
Nazi is the dental practice.
where's
The
that?
dental
Okay.
North and Oak.
is I don't have my pointer,
The
but
dental
it's
surgeon.
Oh, it's right on the
It's
corner
in-
there
it's
across
in
from the
there.
park.
Right.
the northwest corner of North
All right, so
and
that's a little
Oak.
different. Do you know the oral surgeons practice? It's,
Yeah.
do you know where the park with the
Gazebo.
The
gazebo is? Right on that corner, there's a
On the
I-
northwest
Donald.
corner.
It is,
We didn't go across North Avenue. It's
Okay.
at it's north of the northwest corner of North and Oak.
okay, so it wasn't eliminated because of it ruining the TIF in any way?
No.
Okay.
You get to a point where you can make a case to keep going north or east or west.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You have to
but
stop somewhere in terms of,
I don't think they
in
have
terms
anything
of
to do.
definition of downtown, we don't really.
Yeah.
I think in that particular case, though, that is the last business before you get to Lake Street, and that there is a dental practice directly across North Avenue, I think would send kind of a bad message to I'm going to call it the Oak Avenue corridor of businesses.
It's a
And
pretty glaring omission
It's-
in the lineup of all the businesses on Oak.
And the Spinazzis have been exemplary corporate neighbors.
So you want to include it in there, or?
I would say
Yeah,
yes.
I think there'd be, talk about kickback, I think that might be an area that,
Was it included in the previous TIF?
No. The North Avenue was the north, this area here, that boundary is exactly like the old TIF.
Okay.
That, we stopped at North Avenue. And in fact, the old TIF, actually, I shouldn't say that, there were some houses there on the east side of Oak Avenue. Those were not included in the old TIF. We included them in this TIF in order in case they become commercial.
Well, we could recommend to the trustees that we suggest they look at this maybe with some tweaks, incorporating in.
It's, as Chuck said, it's better to do it now than it is, than not.
Yeah, I'll just ask that you don't go too far. That's
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. It's just, it's a good point that you brought up. Because,
I think one of the reasons that that property isn't really zoned commercial. No.
Oh, that,
okay.
So we kind of stopped at the areas, I think it's one of those grandfathered-in properties. And I believe he has a residential zoning, because it was a house that was converted, and they kind of grandfathered it in. And there isn't, any, that zoning line was really stopped at the south, at Durango property. They have some commercial zoning.
so is
I mean,
it,
we can look at it. I'm not
Is
opposed
it going to
to
create
it.
an issue for them when they come for a rebate? That
They
they're
won't
not-
get one.
Well, I mean, if we include
If they
them.
came for a rebate, the board might want to say you need to rezone to commercial. It's kind of always been grandfathered in. Because
I don't want to set them up. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want
kind of a sticky
to
point.
tease them with a rebate and then
We
have
can-
them come for it and find out they
it
don't.
wouldn't be
go for it.
difficult to
well,
look
is there,
at it.
if they're not zoned for commercial, does that mean that they are being taxed at the residential real estate rate rather than the,
I don't know.
Commercial?
My guess is they are not, but if they are, I have a word for that. But I don't know.
What is it?
It's a good question.
If
You
they
know, it's
wanted
kind
to
of
do...
one of those uses that's always been there, and I know it's there, and then maybe they've come in for some building permit, remodeling permits, but
But then you get into trying to figure out separate the business portion of it out from the residential portion of it, and what they're doing with,
yeah.
only part of the building's being used, I think, for, is the
It's-
entire
it's-
building?
Yes.
The entire building is used as the offices. Now, years ago, I don't know what transpired, but I remember we issued permits for like the parking lot and that, but they never zoned it to my knowledge.
I was always under the impression only part of it was being used for commercial venture. In that case, I mean, it's a valid point. Why?
I believe if it's not zoned commercial, I don't think you can tax it as a commercial property if it's not zoned commercial.
Yeah, I'm not that familiar with how they do that from the assessor standpoint. I know I'm more familiar with the commercial pieces.
I would think if it
in
was
the
any
downtown.
benefit to them, they would have come before or something.
They would have made an issue the last
We could be opening.
They thought it could benefit them. They would have already inquired about it
Yeah.
being rezoned. So.
I like Donna's perspective is that,
Well, okay,
let's not tease
Well,
with.
Let sleeping dogs lie. Yeah.
Now we know why. Now if they ask us, we can say why.
I think they'd appreciate us not bringing it to the
Yes,
assessor's
just leave it alone.
attention.
Franco's is
I've got a question.
commercial either.
This says, once adopted, the redevelopment area would be able to utilize TIF funds to carry out, and there's a list of 8 activities. Would be able to doesn't necessarily mean the village would write all these into the TIF plan, or is this pretty much what it is?
Yeah,
The TIF plan is supposed to be permissive, so in other words, it's a blueprint. And we try to identify over a long period of time what the village may do. When it comes to specific actions, specific expenditures, in case that takes basis with the village board. So it's over a long period of time.
So this is a menu that could be selected.
This is a menu, part of it comes from stuff that locally with the general template. Part of it comes from some of the strategic plans and the comprehensive plans and the physical expansion.
Yeah. So, in the last one, the school and library district payments didn't kick in until the TIF expired and what was left over. Is this saying that they would be eligible for TIF funding during the life of the TIF?
I knew someone would ask that question, and that is why Chuck is here. Because that's a new thing.
Not necessarily. This provision was put in 1999 because there was some criticism about TIF districts not reimbursing school districts for new school kids and not reimbursing libraries for new residents to an area of the TIF district because of the use of the property taxes to pay for certain costs. So the law now stipulates that any TIF district is allowed for expenditures to schools and library in the event that a residential project does occur in the future. And if it does occur in the future, and if there's new students or new residents who use the schools or libraries, then you're entitled to a payment. If those things do not occur, then you're not entitled to a payment.
It would have to be residential developments within the TIF area, or where?
In theory, we call that's where new people will reside. It will be people new to the taxing districts. And that is
Anywhere within the village. So it would be increasing the number of people using these services from new housing developments anywhere in the village?
They're resulting from the government.
Only
TIF
in
only,
the TIF.
yeah.
If we were to develop some of the TIF and had some residential development in the TIF district in some of these redevelopment areas, that's where it would kick in.
Say AT&T moved and that became
Or one of
residential.
or one of the metro lots became
Okay,
residential,
okay.
something like that.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
all right.
What impact, if any, would it have on the AT&T building?
It will have little or no impact on the AT&T building. What you see at what was done to that building was the result of a lot of arm twisting by the village staff with AT&T, and we had a AT&T representative that lived in the village, and he soon regretted it. But he was a great guy, and he got his people to put in those improvements. The reason that building won't ever be changed is that there's probably, at the time, it was probably $6 million worth of electronic technology and circuitry and everything, not only in the building, but buried underneath that nice little park we have there, that couldn't be moved. And I suspect now, someday, that technology will be where you can pick up in an iPad and you'll do that, but it's not there yet. But there's a lot of stuff in there. And it used to have, that's where you used to go pay your bills and all that. But you'll see those AT&T buildings throughout downtowns everywhere. And they're just big vaults of wires and fiber optics and everything.
Maybe we could convince them to let us put a second story on it. And,
It was tough enough to get them to do what they did. That was painful.
And number 8, job training, was that one that you saw a need for, or why was that in there?
right. Basically, our recommendation is to create a perspective that includes all 10,000 costs. So anything that's involved in the TIF law, we usually recommend some dollar amount. We place in the budget for that. Number one, because it's a 23-year plan, 15 additional years. And number two, you can use money within that budget on many of those different lines. But if you don't include the actual category, and that category is to be added in the future, you have to go all the way back to the sole category. So it's easier just to include the laundry list, put some dollar amount in there, just in case the village needs to manifest those $2 in the future.
A lot of job skills can change in the next 23 years.
Yeah.
It's also something that, years ago, a lot of the school districts negotiated into the TIF budgets because it provides an opportunity for the village to work with community colleges, high schools, et cetera, to train students for the summer.
Now, the village board has seen all this and discussed it
At the committee level.
at the committee level.
And they forward it on to you, and then it'll go back to them at the committee, and then they have to, there has to be a joint review board, and then they actually hold a public hearing on it. And then they will adopt a set of, was it 3 ordinances, is that correct, Jim?
So we need to formally make a motion, or formally suggest that they review this?
We're actually asking you to make a recommendation that they go through the rest of the process and approve it, if that's your desire.
Okay. Well, I make a motion that we do proceed forward
And
recommending that this TIF be reviewed and move forward with the, with the village board.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Okay.
All right,
Passes.
thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda would be new business. Do we have any, Tony?
Excuse me, Chairman. Something that I would like the board to consider is also the Spartan Consulting report in this. So many of the comments that were made last month in the report that John
Carnates.
that John presented to us, there were so many details in his report that really resonate with this particular TIF study, and I don't know how we do that, but I'd really like us to I would like the EDC to again review that study that he provided us. I don't know if that's available in whole, because we just got cliff notes on it, because
We're
I think
supposed to get a written report from him.
I have the form of his PowerPoint. He sent that to me.
I think he provided something to us last month as well.
There was supposed to be
Or
one, a
formal.
longer,
But, yeah, we were supposed to get a more detailed report.
Right.
that a couple of you heard them present, but the rest of us never got the background and the research.
Yeah, he told us that after the semester was over, that he would give us a written report that kind of flushed out the whole PowerPoint. And one of the things just in the TIF district, and it's a good point you brought up, Tracy, is that the TIF provides marketing dollars. So we can take that report, and when we create the TIF district, allocate marketing dollars to do some of the things outlined in his report. But we'll follow up, because we were supposed to get a written report that was more than just the PowerPoint. And that was a semester, and it was kind of the school project and the end of the semester at the community college. I hope he's getting it done. So we'll find out on that.
Are the trustees aware of it, the report? Have
Yeah,
they seen any
they're
of it?
aware of it. They got the PowerPoint and that,
Yeah,
but
'cause-
that's all we got.
Yeah, because didn't you say that that kind of was already being embraced by the administration and the board?
It was
That
part
it's-
of your original
Yeah, that-
recommendations on improving the downtown.
Yeah, and they already
So
saw a lot of that.
They were good about that.
Yeah.
So was there any discussion? I know that they had their strategic planning this weekend. Was that brought up in the strategic plan at all, or no?
A little bit. They discussed marketing in general, and doing a full marketing plan for the village. And so you'll probably be getting, it'll be a little more broad-based than just the community college was focused on the downtown. So you'll probably be getting that. It was marketing in the context of, broader, industrial, commercial, residential development. It was a how to market the village kind of thing. So that's what they talked about, not just the downtown one. But we'll get that full report. But implementation of that with the TIF district is easy, because you have money to do it.
Well, I think that John presented a really powerful vision for us moving
Right.
forward that was not only vibrant, but certainly gave us something to build on for 5 and 7 and 20 years down the line. And certainly I think that's the direction that we should be thinking in specifically for this area, so that we don't fall back into any opportunities of blighting or vacancies that we have now. And I think that also underscores Mike's earlier comment or his request that we come back to the drawing board, or we get those that are involved discussing the best practices and coming up with that woulda, coulda, shoulda list.
Yeah, I agree.
I think what I'm trying to impress upon us all is that we look at this bucket of resources that we have available and really use them incredibly wisely, and again tap into those great minds that we had out of Spartan Consulting, and certainly discuss some of the comments that were made by Chuck's firm. Let's spend the dollars wisely if we're going to spend them.
So if he's going to give a report, is that something that you're going to provide us with as far as what he said and what should be done?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So this will be done maybe at the next meeting?
Hopefully.
We hope it will be. Yeah.
Because all we've got is what you saw. That's all we've had so far. And he told us he would follow it up with a full report.
I think it would be helpful for the Economic Development Commission to also to review the marketing plan.
Well, that hasn't come out of the board yet, so it was discussed at the strategic plan, and I suspect that they will have you be an integral part of that. We do, as you know, we do an annual work plan, so it'll be kind of an offshoot of that, and putting it into a formal plan for not just the commercial, they actually talked about residential development as part of that too, because there's land to still develop residentially, so they want to make sure it's marketed properly.
Won't a lot of those recommendations that he made last month be handled by the Planning Commission?
I'm sorry, on what?
About long-term views and everything?
Well, they get the strategic plan, but the Plan Commission usually is more focused on, the day-to-day projects that we see. And they're working under the context of their village-wide comprehensive plan, which was last updated in 2007. Now with this downtown RTA plan, that may eventually be an amendment to that plan. So they'll get involved in that too.
That would fall more into the strategic plan than long-term
Well,
strategic
the strategic plan is done every year, and that's more the village's let's do these things list. So those are the things that we're directed to work on, and that goes, it's all the departments: police, fire, not fire, but police, public works, building, administration, and they give it, that strategic plan are all our guide on what to work on. And if it's not in there, we don't work on it.
I'm just trying to figure out how it all blends together, because you got all these various commissions doing their own thing, and we really don't interact with any of them.
It all blends together at the village board level. because they get input and advice from all these different commissions, including police and fire commission and the police pension board and our, zoning board, plan commission, your commission, and the different, it all blends at the village board, and they do it in the context of the strategic plan. And if there's something that's outside of that, then they have to look at it and decide whether they want to work on it or not.
Well, perhaps that presents a great opportunity for the commissions to coalesce, to bring something before the board.
Well, they're 100% behind this RTA grant because they approved the grant agreement that we had to enact. They like the marketing plan. Tony's working with this South Elgin School District on this video program. So your recommendations that you made, the board's told us do those. And those things we're working on them.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. This is one of them.
So is this still open to everyone, the video contest, or what's
Video
the South?
contest is open.
Yeah.
And
What's
that's-
the South
yeah.
Elgin?
There's the South Elgin, you recall a few months ago, we were talking about doing specifically economic development videos.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And that's separate
That's
from the
what
video
they're
contest.
Okay.
There's like 2 tracks, one open to anybody as a contest, and another we're going to be working with, I forget South Elgin High School. They have a name for their video class project, and we'll be working with them real soon, this semester.
Okay, Tony, you want to move on to new business and tell us what's going on?
I'd be glad to. Just give me a second to find my notes. I took notes on all these discussions. There are actually, this is interesting. We talk about it month after month about the abundance of small businesses in Bartlett. There's a few national chains that, like we were talking about earlier, kind of gravitate towards 59 and Stearns. There's 2 small businesses just opened the first of the year, so just last week. They're both in the same building. They're both just about a block from here. I visited with one on Friday. That was Ion Nutrition. They're in the former candy store location at 138 South Oak. It's opened by a former village resident, but Neil Servone grew up in Bartlett, actually patronizing the coin shop quite a bit. So he opened a nutrition, vitamin, diet supplement, protein, and that type of store. Very well done, attractive space, real friendly guy. And anyway, it's called Ion Nutrition. This is going in the Bart letter. I was working on writing the Bart letter earlier today. So, and then the other one is open right in that same building upstairs. It's called Book Ladies Book Attic. And this is a longtime Bartlett resident, Pam Giramillo, and has turned her long-term love and knowledge of books into a used bookstore here in downtown Bartlett. Real cute shop. You would walk up the stairs where the actually Chamber of Commerce used to use those offices. And it could go on and on, but there's a wide variety of books there. They're low-priced. She said lower than half-price books, and it's just a really very cute location. There's a little kid book area. There's books for adults, and there's something I found interesting as the father of a high school student, a required reading section with classics that the local schools are requiring. So anyhow, she has a Facebook page. It's called Book Ladies Book Attic. I put it on the Village Facebook page today. So for those of you who look at the Discover Bartlett page, you can see photos of her and her shop. And once again, urge everybody, not just the commission, the public, to shop local as much as possible. There's not a lot of bookstores around anymore, and it's nice to have one right nearby with real friendly service. So those are two new ones. There's a few new ones coming right on the horizon. I always say that, but there will be a few more. There's going to be a new Zumba studio that's going to be opening in the next couple of weeks. The AutoZone is working real hard at opening their location where the Hallmark used to be. And there's a few others I'm just going to say are kind of in the hopper, but not really starting their work yet. So we hope 2015 is going to be another good year for opening businesses here in town.
Where's the Zumba location?
That's going to be over in Westgate Commons Shopping Center.
Tony, is there anything new on the old Dominic's building?
The Dominic's building doesn't have any solid potential tenants yet. As I've mentioned before, sometimes it seems unfortunate. Safeway keeps paying their rent automatically on the first of the month. They have at least through 2018. And meanwhile, the broker for the center, as well as myself, have been reaching out to others, hoping to subdivide it at some point in time. I've mentioned it before, but it doesn't really look likely at this time for one grocer or retailer to take the whole space. So all the discussions I've had with Cole Real Estate, who owns it, we mostly talk about subdividing the space in the future. I don't know when that'll be done. They've priced it out as basically a $2 million project to do that.
Tony, just to clarify, so there's really no incentive for them to divide it or re-rent it, because they probably got a pretty high rent guaranteed because that contract was signed before the economy crashed, right? Am I kind of
yes,
on the spot
but I'm
there?
gonna put a asterisk or a qualifier next to that. There's a number of businesses I've been told, and I can't say exactly who they are, but they have clauses in their leases that allow them out of their lease after the grocery store is closed for a year, and it's been closed for a year. And there's also a ripple effect to other businesses that don't have that. Jim and I frequent McMay's, and that's an example of somebody whose business, doesn't completely rely on it, but benefits from people shopping at other businesses. So what's happening is some of the businesses in that center have seen their sales decrease in the years since Dominic's is closed. So in one respect, you're right. They're happy because they get their rent check every month. But on the flip side, if it remains vacant for a period of years, you could see other businesses in that area suffer. And that wouldn't help the village or the shopping center owner.
So they're probably looking at the whole equation going, okay, how do we maximize our profit? I mean, they're a business, and they're
Yeah,
gonna say,
absolutely.
hey,
Yeah.
we're going to do what's best for us, period, whether you guys like it or not.
Yeah, and I'll mention again, it's owned by a very large real estate investment trust, and even though we all know that means they're well capitalized and they own billions of dollars worth of real estate, they still suffer, and they still review every center and every segment of the different regions, and they don't want to see any one of their centers become unprofitable. They can handle it. They're not going to go out of business, but they don't want to see Stearns Crossing, negative revenue scenario. So
Yeah.
I think basically the longer that stays vacant, the more pressure is going to build on the shopping center owner.
Thank you.
One more question, if I may.
Yeah.
There's dirt removal going on 59 and West Bartlett Road.
Oh, yeah.
Is that still going, or
That was approved last Tuesday.
was approved?
Yeah, they'll probably start when the weather breaks.
Is this at the request of a developer that you're doing this?
Property owner, yes,
The property owner
yes,
is requesting it.
yes.
Howard, has there been any change in the vacancies in Brewster Creek? I noticed that Rhino Docks is no longer in that building, or did they go through a name change Looks like
They
now
were-
there's access.
Yeah, they were just
purchased.
acquired by a bigger, actually, for them, it was a very profitable endeavor. They went through building a building and opening in Bartlett, and they were promptly purchased by a bigger company, so, yeah. And then Jim reminds me, we're getting a very large, they don't process food in the same sense that some of our other companies do, but we're going to end up getting one of the largest candy packaging and processing companies in the market coming in to the former Victory Land Group building. That's something that was a kind
You've
of...
all bought their
Great.
product. If you've ever bought a candy cane with the little plastic, the clear plastic with the red top, that's what this company does. They make 80 million of those every year, and they package it. So you've seen their products and you've bought
How
them.
many jobs is that bringing into the area?
Tony's got a better handle. It's a lot.
It's going to be approximately 300. Another asterisk I'm going to put next to that is it's 20 to 30 full-time positions, and the remainder are hourly and contractual. So really, it's about 25 full-time positions.
Are they taking the whole 300,000 square feet?
400.
400,000 square feet?
Yeah, it's the biggest building in the town. They're not going to be utilizing the entire, they're really going to be starting with approximately half the space, but they're a very, very quick growing business. This will be, I think, their 5th location in the northwest suburbs. So they're expanding at a very rapid rate, and they envision utilizing the whole 400. And the reason they like that building in particular is there's enough land there where they can expand to 600,000.
That's great
Wow.
news. Thank you.
It's big business right out there.
Eat more candy.
Okay, final agenda item would be adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I motion for adjournment.
A second.
Cecilia moved,
Motion.
and you're seconded, right, Robert?
I second it.
Okay.
Motion carried. Meeting is adjourned.